Hi, Nadja. What wonderful that you're here, and so happy that we can talk about COVID-19 this week.
Thanks for having me. Nice to see you again, Ruth.
And could you tell us something about yourself and why it is relevant that we have you on the show this week?
Sure. So I'm working at the Alliance for Securing Democracy, which is a program based at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. And what I'm doing also with our team, we are analyzing the foreign authoritarian interference in democracies. We are looking at different tools they are using in order to undermine or weaken the democratic institutions, democratic processes, and the tools they are using to also amplify divisive narratives, which I think will be relevant for today's conversation.
Thanks. That's absolutely amazing. You were actually mentioned in one of the Dutch newspapers, right? You had an interview recently.
Yes, that's true.
So what I'd like to talk to you about today is Chinese disinformation around COVID-19. Most of the time when we heard about state actors around disinformation, the story has always been about Russia. But we hear a lot about disinformation coming from China as well nowadays. Can you tell us, is there Chinese disinformation around COVID-19?
Well, what we have been tracking through our tools, or what I've been also seeing, is that China started to become much more assertive in the information space. So before, they would apply mostly public diplomacy and propaganda tools. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have also seen that their strategy has evolved and their tactics during COVID-19 have evolved. And I can give you a very clear example when on the day after the World Health Organization, WHO, declared the outbreak a pandemic, you would see that from the Chinese official accounts, especially from a senior Chinese foreign minister spokesman, he tweeted an article from a well-known pro-Kremlin outlet, Global Research Canada, that was claiming false theories about the origins of the virus, that it originated in the United States. And what is very interesting about this, that it's first of all, it was a false claim. Second, it came from this very high-level official Twitter account, but also it got amplified and retweeted by more than a dozen of diplomatic accounts. It got thousands of retweets from other accounts, thousands of views, and really therefore had quite a wide reach of audiences. And these false theories later on, have been circulating over social media platforms more widely. So you can see that their kind of previous tactic of promoting a very positive international image abroad, also that would reflect back to their domestic audiences, actually has evolved and became much more confrontational, and also using manipulated information.
But it's funny that, or funny, I mean, it started with the Russian news website, a disinformation website that actually then was taken up by a high official from China and then amplified in a coordinated manner.
This tweet got also amplified by the state media, the Chinese state media outlets. So that's how it also got actually, this, you could see more of this connectivity or connection and how they can enhance or amplify each other's messages further. Yes, that's a very good question. So we see it happening now, this type of tactic during COVID-19. And we have also seen a very large increase of especially Twitter accounts, which are official diplomatic China's accounts, since the last year, actually, since the protests in Hong Kong. So since then, it really multiplied by several 100%. So it's also I think, of course, the momentums, the events, but at the same time, it contributes to the understanding of the evolving tactics.
So it's basically new troll factories like we've known in St. Petersburg have come up since protests in Hong Kong from accounts that are connected to Chinese officials or seem connected to Chinese officials?
Well, we only track the government accounts. So
and they increase.
You can see how the government accounts have, the number of them, the official accounts or the state-backed media accounts, how they increase in their amount. The impact further, we are not monitoring that further.
Wow. And to what point, because you already mentioned it, that there's a difference between a positive image internally, nationally focused, and more aggressive narratives directed at foreign audiences. To what degree would you say the narratives that they push, or the focus that they have on spreading an alternative reality is focused at national or at foreign audiences?
Well, there I think you can see quite a difference between China and Russia, because China very rarely actually speaks or discusses internal affairs over social media disinformation campaigns. While, for example, China, through some video channels, I think they have more than half of their content actually is referring to China and trying to promote the alternative model to democracies that during the COVID-19 they were targeting as not coordinated enough or not responding properly to the pandemic, and therefore they could try to elevate their own image. So that you would see also certain kind of dynamics between how the authoritarian regimes can try to be portrayed as more effective, as democratic. So something that Russia usually just tries to divide and contribute to the chaos, and does not speak much about the Russian internal affairs. So there is I think quite a big difference. But also what you can see during the COVID-19 pandemic is that China also started to contribute to these divisive narratives, and amplifying also the divisive narratives that would be coming from Russia, for example, also was enhancing basically their efforts. So
combining their efforts, even maybe.
Yeah, like trying to basically contribute to the perception that democracies are chaotic. They are trying to question the legitimacy of the Western media outlets, which is kind of more of a Russian playbook style, and China has been at least recently adopting this as well, which was not the case really before.
Interesting. And can we say anything about, have you seen anything that points to coordinated efforts in a way, like how can it be that one tweet gets retweeted by so many state official accounts? Do you know anything about how that works?
I think it's there is some evidence of showing that potentially there may be some coordination, let's say sharing some offices between Chinese media outlets and the Russian media outlets, or this enhancement of each other's messaging. But yeah, at this point, I think I would like to get more evidence and see how it evolves to actually be confident in such a claim of coordination. I think there is still much more evidence that we need to gather to kind of confidently say that there is such a coordination. But we already see that their messaging are enhancing each other's efforts, and I think we need to watch that. We need to watch that first.
And when they spread narratives, is that because what you mentioned, the first example was a originally Russian disinformation message that they amplified? Is there also a creation part to the Chinese narratives?
Well, I think especially because of the COVID-19 originating in Wuhan, in China, I think what China tried to do was deflect the blame from their delays in response, or the criticism of how they responded, or how there was a suppression of information in the information space. So these questions about the messaging about the the origin of the virus and the false theories and the conspiracy theories that they enhanced is something that is beyond just propaganda, right? It's more on the manipulated information side. What I think is actually more important as well is to look at how Chinese authoritarian approach before in the information space was rather to suppress criticism or to control information, control the narrative, while now it's really actually also even more to contribute to the chaos and the doubts. So it doesn't have to be necessarily the one controlled narrative, but also like amplification of the confrontation or like contradictory narratives. And that's also what Russia tends to do and what China has been doing now more.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we look at Russian disinformation and the Chinese disinformation at this stage, what Jakub said as well was that it looked like the Russian disinformation was more opportunistic, like linking COVID-19 to already existing disinformation about migrants or other topics. Do we see a difference in that sense, that there might really be an agenda for China in this case, because the origin is Wuhan, that in that sense it's different from the Russian disinformation that we're seeing around COVID-19?
Well, what we are looking at through our tools is actually more the strategic trend. So looking at the trends, not necessarily opportunistic daily exploitation of a narrative, but how does it overall portray in longer term. So the examples I gave you, or the kind of trend we have been seeing, it's more strategic, and China has been known to be a quite strategic actor, the narratives about the trade war with the US or on Huawei or these other things, they are, I think, and I would also like to, of course, observe it further, but they are much more strategic and longer term, and I think their intention is aligned with this effort.
So we may just start beginning to see what they're capable of in the ways of disturbing democracies with disinformation, even maybe on a higher level than we've seen so far from Russia.
And also, what we are also seeing is basically how the information space is becoming the space of asymmetric battle, and how the actors actually, and various actors, are realizing that and are using or abusing the information space, which in democratic societies is open, is very transparent, and allows for expression of all kinds of opinions. So I think what is quite interesting to observe is exactly this nature of the information space, and how and who can use it to what purposes.
Because have you been able to? It's difficult to measure effect. I mean, I even since the 2016 elections, nobody has even dared to say we have concrete evidence that people have voted differently because of disinformation. Is there anything to say about the maybe negative effects of COVID-19 disinformation from China?
I think what we can see is that this kind of information confusion and these efforts that are trying to raise further doubts and question the legitimacy of the democratic efforts or democratic institutions and their capacity to fight COVID-19, the effect on people is that they may feel even more overwhelmed by the information in the system, that it may be harder for them to filter the credible, authoritative messages and understand perhaps which are the trusted sources they can go to, because there is so many of them and there is so much more information, and these efforts are trying to amplify all kinds of divisive information that becomes even more difficult for the consumers, citizens, users to actually filter the factual, accurate information. And this is the effect that you don't only see during COVID-19. This is that effect that we saw through disinformation campaigns before, and we will surely see it further. So we are aware of the fact that more information you have, more sources it comes from, more challenging it may be for people to filter the right information and the accurate information. So this is a challenge that I think also rises from this kind of campaigns.
You've basically answered all questions in such a good way that I don't even know what to talk about anymore.
I would be happy to follow further how your conversations go as you're piling it up, and I wish you all the best in this effort.
Thanks. Thank you so much for your time and your insights from your research.
I hope we will find solutions to counter this disinformation efforts, and I hope there will be a common approach to this, a little bit democracies, partnering with each other. Yeah.
And let's hope that we can save Göteborg from disease as